Usually when you think about a massive hit song, you imagine like pure, spontaneous
Oh,
bounce.
absolutely. The whole lightning in a bottle thing.
Right. You picture an artist in a dimly lit studio at 2 in the morning, struck by sudden inspiration, and you hear a classic track, and your brain automatically tells you, wow, that is a completely unique, unrepeatable work of art.
Yeah, we all really love that myth of the muse. It's a deeply romantic idea.
It really is.
And honestly, it feels comforting to believe that the music we attach to our most intense memories was born from pure, unpredictable human emotion.
But then you step into the actual world of chart history and music production. And, well, that romantic imagery gets replaced by something that looks a lot more like a medical x-ray.
Or, in the case of our source material for this deep dive, a highly detailed 50-year spreadsheet.
Exactly. So today, we have our hands on this rigorous analytical document, and it's titled The Black Radio Song Template. And just to set the stage for you listening, this isn't, a collection of subjective music reviews.
No, not at all. We aren't debating what sounds good or bad here.
Right. This is a hard data breakdown of the tempo, the keys, the drum breaks, and the chord progressions that have systematically dominated the charts from the 1970s all the way to the 2020s.
Yeah, the core thesis of this entire body of research is that hit songs are not random occurrences. I mean, they are built on highly engineered, reusable, and portable templates.
Portable templates, that's such a wild concept for music.
It is, but the underlying rhythm is constantly recycled. Meanwhile, the surface-level elements, like the tempo and the musical key, those are just swapped out to fit whatever the current cultural era is.
So basically, we are going to act as your shortcut today to understanding modern music production. And the best part is, you don't need a 4-year music theory degree to get this.
Definitely not.
But before we can even talk about the melody or, the heartbreak in the singer's voice, we have to look at the absolute bottom layer of the track, the foundation.
Right, the drums.
Yeah, the drums. And the sources introduce this mind-bending concept of portability when it comes to these drum breaks.
Portability really is the absolute key to understanding how hits are manufactured. Like, the data tracks classic drum breaks. Take James Brown's Funky Drummer, for example.
Okay, classic.
Right, which naturally sits around 95 beats per minute. Or the Honey Drippers Impeach the President, which is at about 92 BPM. The most vital characteristic of these drum breaks is that they have absolutely no musical key.
Because they're just percussion, right? Like a snare drum doesn't sing a C major or an A minor.
Exactly. That lack of melodic pitch makes them completely agnostic to whatever else is happening in the song. It is strictly rhythmic geometry.
Just kick drums, snares, and closed hi-hats?
Yeah. And because there is no tonal clash, these drum patterns are universally portable. I mean, a producer can change every single synthesizer, every bass line, every vocal melody around them, and the underlying groove never breaks.
It makes me think of an automobile chassis. Like, the drum loop is the steel frame of the car.
That's a great way to look at it.
Right. You can paint it any color you want, which would be the musical key, and you can drive it at any speed, which is the BPM.
Yep.
But that fundamental steel frame remains exactly the same, whether it's a 1970s funk track or a 2024 hip-hop anthem. You're basically just dropping a different model of car on top of it.
That is spot on.
But wait, if these chassis are so identical, how do producers create different feelings? Like, the sources talk about a 1-bar 16-step grid pattern.
Right, the basic building block.
Yeah. If I imagine that as a piece of graph paper with 16 empty boxes in a row, and every producer is using that exact same piece of paper, why does Michael Jackson's Rock With You feel so drastically different from, say, Zapp's More Bounce to the Ounce?
Well, the variation happens through extremely subtle choices in placement. Even within those 16 empty boxes on your graph paper, exactly which box the producer places the kick drum and the snare drum, that creates a unique physical reaction.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the spreadsheet actually contrasts the classic drum break from Skull Snaps' A New Day with Melvin Bliss's Synthetic Substitution.
Oh, I know those tracks. They are like the foundational hip-hop samples.
They are everywhere. And they're both built on the exact same 16-step grid. But the Skull Snaps break puts a kick drum on the 4th step.
Okay, and what does that do?
It creates syncopation, which basically means playing a note slightly off the expected steady pulse. That specific placement gives the Skull Snaps break this bouncy, really aggressive feel.
Got it. And the Melvin Bliss break?
The Melvin Bliss break, on the other hand, pushes its second kick drum all the way back to the 11th step.
Wow, that far back.
Yeah, and that creates a dragging, heavy, almost delayed feeling.
Yeah.
You're physically reacting to the math of where those dots are placed on the graph paper.
That is fascinating. But, you know, a chassis sitting in a garage, no matter how cool the syncopation is, it still isn't going anywhere. It needs an engine to drive it.
Right, the engine's the tempo.
Exactly. And this is where the X-ray shows us the evolution of energy over 50 years. The drum frame might stay the same, but the speed limit completely dictates the cultural era.
Oh, absolutely. The tempo tracks the literal heartbeat of the culture. I mean, if we start in the 70s and 80s, the spreadsheet shows the sweet spot for a hit on black radio was sitting between 110 and 120 beats per minute.
120 BPM. If I try to tap my foot to that, that is a serious workout. It's incredibly fast.
It was the era of disco and funk, right? It was designed for maximum physical exertion in a club. And the defining characteristic here is what musicians call four on the floor.
Oh, that's where the heavy kick drum hits on every single beat, right? Just 1, 2, 3.
Exactly. It mimics a rapid, elevated human heartbeat. It biologically compels you to march or to dance. The data actually points to Cameo's Word Up as the perfect specimen of this.
Oh, great song.
Sitting right at 112 BPM. It is just driving, relentless energy. But then, as the timeline shifts into the 90s and 2000s, the entire industry steps on the brakes.
Everything slows down.
Right. The average tempo drops down to the 95 to 110 BPM range.
So that's the rise of neo-soul and hip-hop soul. The aggression of the disco era really softens up.
Exactly. The groove gets relaxed. It blends the warmth of traditional R&B with a laid-back, head-nodding hip-hop swing. And when you look at the ballads from this specific era, the tempo just plummets.
How low are we talking?
They drop anywhere from 60 to 100 BPM. Like Paul Abdul's straight-up registers at 96 BPM. Then you have extreme outliers like KC and JoJo's All My Life.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That one drops all the way down to a sluggish 63 BPM.
63 BPM, there's so much empty space between the drum hits at that speed. But I guess that's the point, right?
That was exactly the point.
That empty space is what allows for those massive acrobatic vocal runs that define 90s R&B. The singer literally needs the time to tell the emotional story.
Yeah, the tempo creates the real estate for the vocalist to work. Fast tempos for short, punchy, rhythmic singing. Slow tempos allow for sustained, deeply emotional belting.
Okay, I am totally following the logic of this timeline, but I have to stop you here because I'm looking at the data for the modern era, the 2010s and 2020s, and I am genuinely confused.
Really? What's the anomaly?
Well, the spreadsheet says that the trap soul era, which is basically the dominant sound of modern R&B and hip-hop, operates at 130 to 150 BPM.
Right.
But when I listen to a trap soul track on the radio, it does not sound like a 130 BPM disco song.
No, it doesn't.
It sounds incredibly slow. It sounds dark and moody and dragging. How can the math say 150 BPM while my ears are telling me it's the slowest music on the dial?
That is such a great observation. The mechanism there is a brilliant piece of rhythmic engineering called the halftime illusion.
The halftime illusion. Okay, break that down for me.
So if you put a modern trap soul track on a metronome, the underlying grid is technically running at a blistering speed. The digital hi-hats, those rapid ticking sounds you hear all over modern radio.
Right, the really fast skittering ones.
Exactly. Those are actually flying along at 130 to 150 beats per minute. But human biology doesn't use the hi-hat to find the groove. We anchor our bodies to the snare drum.
The big, heavy clap.
Yes. We wait for the snare to tell us when to nod our heads. And in halftime music, the producer only programs that main snare to hit half as often as it would in a traditional 70s dance track.
Oh, wow.
Instead of hitting twice in every measure, it only hits once. Because that snare is spaced out so far apart, the perceived speed to the listener, what your body actually feels, is a heavy, sluggish 65 to 75 BPM.
That is wild. So the spreadsheet is technically correct about the high speed of the hi-hats, but the rhythmic feel completely hijacks the actual tempo.
Exactly.
They are essentially hiding a slow, emotional ballad inside a hyper-fast, aggressive rhythmic grid. You get the nervous energy of the fast hi-hats rubbing up against the heavy, emotional drag of a slow drum beat.
Yeah, it creates a completely unique physical tension that honestly defines the entire decade of music.
All right, so we have our identical steel drum frame, and we have our engine's tempo, whether that's the 120 BPM disco, sprint, or the halftime trap soul crawl, but speed alone doesn't make a person cry in their car.
No, definitely not.
We need the color. We need the actual emotional triggers. And the sources show that producers use a strict mathematical formula of musical chords to basically guarantee a song will make you feel sad or sexy or uplifted.
Yeah, the first massive takeaway from the harmonic data is the absolute dominance of minor keys in this genre.
Really? Because mainstream pop usually loves major keys, right?
Oh, totally. Mainstream commercial pop music traditionally loves major keys. C major, G, D. They sound bright, sunny, and resolved. But the analysis of Black radio, hits from the 90s all the way to the 2020s, shows a landscape almost entirely dominated by minor keys.
Like C minor, A minor, F minor.
Exactly.
But why do minor keys automatically sound deeper or sadder to us? Like, what is the actual mechanism happening there in our brains?
Well, it really comes down to acoustic dissonance and psychological expectation. A major chord is built on intervals, which is the physical distance between the notes that are mathematically wide and stable.
Okay.
The human brain perceives that stability as happy or finished. But to make a minor chord, you literally flatten the middle note. You shrink the gap.
And that creates tension.
Yeah, it creates a subtle acoustic friction. The frequencies are rubbing against each other in a way that feels slightly unresolved. And the human brain interprets that lack of resolution as tension, yearning, or sorrow.
Wow, it's a biological demand for closure that the song just refuses to give you. That makes perfect sense.
It really does.
And within those keys, the producers are using specific, repeatable sequences of chords. The research literally calls them cheat codes. Let's look at the biggest one on the spreadsheet, the pop gold progression.
Ah, yes, pop gold.
It's the 1 chord, the 5, the minor 6, and the 4.
The 1-5 minor 6-4. If a label wants a song to cross over to every demographic, play in every grocery store, and get licensed for television commercials, this is the formula.
It's just guaranteed.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The data highlights its use in Beyoncé's Irreplaceable, and The Weeknd's Earned It.
If we think about these chord progressions as a chef's flavor profiles, the pop gold sequence is like salt and sugar.
That's a perfect analogy.
It immediately hits the brain's baseline pleasure centers. It's emotionally sad because of that minor 6 chord, but it ends on a hopeful note that brings you right back to the beginning. Everyone likes salt and sugar, and it sells incredibly well.
It is universally appetizing. But, if an artist wants to create an atmosphere that is much more intimate, the data shows they shift to the minor soul loop.
The minor soul loop, what is that one?
This is the 1 minor chord, the flat 7, the flat 6, and back to the flat 7.
And mechanically, how does that sequence manipulate the listener?
It traps you. It traps you in a continuous sensual loop. Unlike pop gold, which eventually gives your brain that clean, happy resolution, the minor soul loop never fully resolves. It just hovers in that flattened, tense space.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the spreadsheet traces a direct mathematical line using this exact harmonic engine from Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On in the 1970s, straight to Childish Gambino's Redbone in the modern era.
That is crazy. The technology changed completely, but the math equation designed to make you feel intimate tension remained absolutely identical.
Exactly.
Going back to our chef analogy, the minor soul loop is like adding something fermented or heavily smoked to a dish. It introduces a bitter tension that forces your brain to sit with the flavor. You wouldn't put it on a mass market pop song, but it creates a very specific, undeniable mood.
Spot on. And the data outlines several other highly functional formulas, too. There's the gospel worship progression.
Oh, which one is that?
That's the 4-1-5 minor 6. You see this heavily in Kirk Franklin's catalog. Mechanically, it constantly feels like it's ascending. It is mathematically designed to physically lift the spirit.
And the sources also point out the jazz standard, right? The 2-5-1 progression.
Yeah. It's listed as a mandatory staple for sophisticated neo-soul artists like Stevie Wonder. It provides a very smooth, rolling resolution.
And then there's the heartbreak formula, the 50s ballad progression, the 1 minor 6 4 5.
The absolute sound of classic romance and heartbreak. It's the foundational DNA of Boys II Men's End of the Road and Alicia Keys' If I Ain't Gotcha.
You know, it's honestly a little unsettling to realize that the intense emotions I felt listening to End of the Road were essentially triggered by a 1 minor 6 4 5 math equation, just pressing buttons in my brain.
Well, the math provides the highly optimized canvas.
Oh.
The artist still has to provide the raw vocal talent to paint the picture on top of it. But the emotional boundaries of that picture, those were mathematically determined before the singer even stepped up to the microphone.
So with all of this historical data, the indestructible drum chassis, the evolution from 120 BPM disco to the sluggish halftime trap illusion the minor key cheat codes.
Right. All of it.
Where does this massive spreadsheet say we are sitting today? Like, what does the 2020s status report look like?
Looking at this through an evolutionary lens, you see a ruthless survival of the fittest.
Oh, for sure.
The funky drummer breaks survived the transition from analog tape machines to digital streaming software. The halftime trap soul beats are currently the apex predators of the radio. But the spreadsheet also documents the extinctions.
The extinctions, like what didn't survive?
Well, the New Jack Swing rhythm of the late 80s. Think of Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison.
Oh, yeah, that very specific fancy swung drum pattern.
Exactly. The data categorizes that as a legacy format. That aggressive 16th note swing just hasn't survived into modern mainstream production.
Interesting. And what about harmonically?
Harmonically, the universally appealing pop gold chords and the lingering minor soul loops are still incredibly active. But the 2020s have definitely developed their own specific harmonic signature.
So if I turn on a current streaming playlist right now, what is the math I am actually hearing?
You are hearing a massive reliance on the borrowed major chord.
The borrowed major chord. Break that down.
It involves moving from a flat 7 major 7th chord to the 1 major 7th. To strip away the jargon, adding that 7th note to the chord creates a dreamy, expansive, almost floating acoustic sensation.
Okay, I can picture that sound.
It is the defining atmospheric sound of artists like Frank Ocean and SCA.
Yeah, it feels very introspective, almost like you're floating in water.
Exactly. And you are also seeing producers rely heavily on minor 9 vamps.
What's a vamp again?
A vamp is just a repeating loop that refuses to go to a traditional chorus. And when you add that 9th note to a minor chord, you are adding a frequency that deliberately clashes with the rest of the chord.
More of that acoustic friction.
Right. It's a lush, hypnotic rub that creates a deep emotional atmosphere. The modern hit doesn't try to hook you with a massive chorus. It tries to hypnotize you with a complex, unresolved vamp.
You know, what strikes me the most about this entire deep dive is the irony of our current era.
How do you mean?
Well, we live in a time of unbelievable technological power. A kid in their bedroom has access to infinite digital synthesizers, artificial intelligence mastering tools, and software that can bend sound waves into any shape imaginable.
Oh, the tools are endless now.
Right. And yet, despite having a limitless digital sandbox, the hitmakers of the 2020s are fundamentally just layering sophisticated 9th jazz chords over analog drum breaks recorded in the 1970s.
It's true. The technology evolved at lightning speed, but human biology stayed exactly the same. The mathematical formulas that made our heads nod and our hearts ache during the James Brown and Marvin Gaye eras, they still work today.
Because the psychology hasn't changed.
Exactly. The psychological mechanisms of tension, resolution, and rhythm are hardwired into us.
So let's pull the camera all the way back on this blueprint. We started out looking for the spontaneous magic of a hit song, but the X-ray tells a completely different story.
A very mathematical story.
Yeah, a hit is built on a portable, keyless rhythm chassis. The engine's tempo dictates the cultural energy, from the heart-pounding 120 BPM sprint of a disco club to the heavy, perceived 65 BPM drag of a modern trap soul hit, masking its true speed with the halftime illusion.
Right.
And finally, the producer paints the emotion using a handful of highly optimized chord progressions that exploit the acoustic friction of minor keys to trigger yearning, sadness, or joy.
The real power of seeing this data, for you listening, is that the next time you hear a massive hit on the radio, you won't just hear the vocal melody. You will hear the underlying architecture.
You'll hear the math.
Exactly. You'll recognize the math of a 1970s syncopated drum break keeping the time, and you'll feel the psychological pull of a pop gold chord progression deliberately pushing your emotional buttons.
It genuinely is like seeing the code behind the matrix.
Yeah.
But it leaves me with one final, slightly provocative thought for you to chew on long after this is over.
Well, let's hear it.
If these exact mathematical combinations of rhythm and acoustic frequencies have systematically controlled human emotion for 50 straight years, what does that actually say about us?
That's a deep question.
Are our brains just biologically hardwired to be helplessly manipulated by a very specific set of audio patterns? And if our emotional triggers are truly that predictable, how long until an artificial intelligence simply reads this spreadsheet and generates the absolute perfect, tear-jerking, chart-topping song without a single drop of human inspiration?
Wow.
Next time a song gives you chills, ask yourself if you're feeling the magic of the muse or just the perfection of the math.